Hello, how are you doing? I hope everything is well. I'm Del, your deck technician, and last video we spoke about actually making a deck on Gronok the Omnivore. Now before we go forward, I'd like to ask you to hit that like, that subscribe, and comment down below pretty much anything what you liked about the deck tech or anything just to get the algorithm in our favor and get our video in front of more people. And with that, the deck tech. Gronok is one of the few legendary frog creatures in the game, and honestly, probably one of the few frogs in the game that are even worth playing at all. So let's go over Gronok. Gronok is a 3/3 frog creature that states whenever a frog you control attacks, mill 3 cards. Whenever a permanent card is put into your graveyard from your library, exile it with a croak counter on it. You may play lands and cast spells from among cards you own in exile with croak counters on them. Now, at first glance, this card clearly wants us to be a frog tribal. However, let's understand that the cards that get milled from your library don't have to be from when frogs attack. It can be anytime. And those cards that are exiled, Gronok has to be on the field for you to access them with the croak counters. When he does leave the field, those croak counter cards do not leave at all, meaning cast them again and dip right back into that pile, giving you a pseudo hand whenever he's on the field. This deck screams for frogs, and so we're going to give them frogs, but not the frogs you think. But the actual frogs would be the Omnivore, which allows us to tap and make any creature a 3/3 frog, whether it be ours or theirs. A Spore Frog, which allows us to sacrifice it and negate all combat damage. And just because it feels like it fits the theme, Croaking Counterpart, which is a sorcery that gives us a copy of any creature in the field, except it's a 1/1 frog. So we can copy ours and have multiples of them, or we can copy something else that we like, like the enemy's Avacyn, and have a frog version of it. That'd be so cute. Yep, and that's it. That's all the frogs have added. Now you might be thinking, how the heck is this a frog tribal? Well, I'll tell you. I would rather add a bunch of frogs with nothing than add a few frogs that are even worse. Now you'll see what I'm saying. Like to add the Avenger of Zendikar, states whenever it enters the battlefield, create a number of 0/1 plant tokens equal to the number of lands you control. Landfall, whenever lands the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on each plant you control. We have Scoot Swarm, that states whenever a land enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 insect token. If you have 6 or more lands instead, create another copy of Scoot Swarm, allowing this to go crazy fast. You get 4 Scoot Swarm copies on the field, they all trigger that copy again, giving you even more. This multiplies very fast. And the Ant Queen, which allows you to pay 1 in the green to create a 1/1 insect token onto the battlefield. Now again, you might be saying, those aren't frogs. What are you talking about? But here's where you're wrong. There are a number of cards that can make them frogs, or anything else I want them to. Arcane Adaptation and Xenograph are 2 enchantments that state you pick a creature type and all creatures in your deck, hand, and graveyard, and everywhere else all become that type. And we have Masterwood Nexus that states all creatures are all types, and it can make little shapeshifters that are all types as well. So with these 3 enchantments, with a little bit of redundancy, we can make all of our plants, insects, or whatever we want them to be to also be frogs. Swarm the board, mill our deck, GG. Now you see, we got the meat and potatoes of what we aim to do with our deck, and honestly, it's mill, but it won't be the enemy we'll be milling, it'll be us. So we have a few creatures whose sole purpose is to mill us, and that would be the Hermit Druid. The Hermit Druid states you can pay a green to keep milling our deck until we get a basic land card, and then put that basic land card into our hand. We have a Hedron Crab that whenever a land comes in the battlefield, target creature mills 3 cards, we'll be milling ourselves. Fleet Swallower is a big 6/6 fish that whenever it attacks, target player mills half their deck rounded up. We're gonna have Persistent Petitioner, which states pay 1 mana, have target player mill 1 card, or tap 4 advisors and have target player mill 12 cards. Your deck can have any number of these creatures in your deck. We'll be running 7 of them. We have a few enchantments that'll help us do the job as well. Crawling Sensation allows us to mill 2 cards on upkeep once per turn. If we ever mill a land, then we get a 1/1 green insect token onto the battlefield. You also have Crawling Infestation, which is the Crimson Vow version of Crawling Sensation, but instead of lands, it's a creature card, which will trigger and then give us an insect creature. Court of Cunning, that states whenever it enters the battlefield, you become the monarch, and at the beginning of your upkeep, any number of target players can mill 2 cards, and if we still happen to be the monarch, each of those players instead mills 10 cards. So we could target our players and us, and just win. Jace's Racer is a good cheap one. It says whenever you would draw a card, you may have that player put the top card of his library into the graveyard. If we manage to draw 5-6 cards, we could mill ourselves 5-6 as well. Mesmeric Orb is an artifact that states whenever a permanent becomes untapped, that controller mills a card. So that means you can mill your opponents out for just tapping anything, a land, a creature, anything, and untapping your own board state allows you to mill yourself as well. Perpetual Timepiece states you can tap it and put 2 cards from your library into the graveyard. Additionally, you can pay 2 to exile and shuffle any number of target cards from your graveyard into your library, meaning any cards that got into your graveyard that wasn't milled, that wasn't a permanent, or any way that is in your graveyard, shuffle it back in your library and try to get them back in that exile pile. We have Fact or Fiction that states reveal the top 5 cards of your library. An opponent would then separate them into 2 piles. You grab one to go to your hand, the other goes into your graveyard. And because it is revealed from the top of your library, it is considered still being in your library, so any cards that are permanent this way would then get exiled with crow counters. Lastly, in this category we have Drowning Dreams. Choose one. If you have your commander on the field, choose both. Target player draws X cards and target player mills twice X cards. Now this is something I definitely love because it allows you to draw a chunk of cards and mill yourself twice as much. And if we have Jace's Eraser on the field, the cards we draw, we mill that much more as well. Now with all of our cards being milled right into the exile with our crow counters, we need to make sure we can grab whatever we can from there and get absolute value from them. The first and most important value in my heart is getting those lands out of exile and onto the battlefield. So we're gonna get a bunch of land rampant creatures, then get them onto the field, like Azusa, Lost but Seeking, that allows us to play 2 additional lands each turn. We have Wayward Swordtooth, that allows us to play additional land each turn, and can't attack or block unless we have the City's Blessing, meaning we have 10 permanents on the field, which is fairly easy for us to do. And Dryad of the Elysian Grove allows us to also play additional land each turn, but our land types are every basic land type in addition to their other ones. Pretty sweet. Willow Geese is another value card that we get. It states it has trample whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard. Put a 1/1 counter on Willow Geese. When Willow Geese dies, you gain life equal to its power. Every card that enters our graveyard by milling will be put right into our exile power crow counters, triggering this for every permanent that happens. This guy is going to get big and fast, especially if we get to play him on turn 1. And the Frilled Mystic and Mystic Snake are both permanents that have counter abilities attached to them when they enter the battlefield, giving us essentially counter spells in our crow counter area at all times. Pretty nice. Now that we explained how we're going to overrun the board with our weird frogs and then also mill ourselves into oblivion with our crow counters but actually not mill ourselves, we need a win con, and that's important for every deck. To no surprise, Thassa's Oracle is obviously our major win condition. It states when you come into play, look at the top X cards of your library where X is your devotion. If your library is equal to or less than your devotion to blue, you instantly win the game. You can research and move some cards around, but nobody plays her for that. They want to win the game when she casts. We also have Jace, Wielder of Mysteries, which is a planeswalker that states whenever you would draw a card and you have no cards in your library, you win the game. That also states the same thing for Laboratory Maniac as well. So we have 2 creatures and a planeswalker who ultimately become our win condition, and that's it. I mean, you could add a Cradlehoof Behemoth to all the tokens we should come in and then just slam the board with our frog creatures, which would honestly be the most flexiest thing ever, but this would be the most consistent. And there's our very strange frog tribal deck. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I played test this a lot and it is not my playstyle. And even I was absolutely enjoying the weird shenanigans that this deck was pulling off. Just my exile pile being bigger than my graveyard all the time. And I actually really enjoyed that. But whatever spin you put on this, I'm sure you would enjoy this. If you're looking for a hardcore, constant win after win, I don't know if Gronok's the commander for you, but if you're looking for a good time, he's definitely the one. And with that, the next deck should be far more competitive, would be Alana and Elena partners, which I am looking forward to. That's the commander I was most excited for from Crimson Vow, and this is much more of my playstyle. And with that, I'm gonna get up out of here. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please comment down below what you would change, what you didn't like, what you did like, and let's get ourselves out there in the algorithm flow. I'm gonna have a good night. I hope you guys do too. Goodbye.